today I have another interview for you with the amazing Jin Ong. She is the heart and soul behind the art of listening to your body. If you have never heard of her, check her out on all the platforms under that name, The Art of Listening to Your Body. And she is also a best-selling author. Jin is one of those people that has collected so many different modalities in her lifetime. She was an osteopath for many years, and she's a herbalist and an acupuncturist and an author and a medical intuitive and a master manifester. She calls herself a pattern hunter and theme breaker, which I would very much agree with. And she's here to help us look at things that go on in our body physically in a new light. So let's listen to Jin and what she has to say about thyroid disease and how it actually manifests in our bodies. Welcome, Jin.
Hi again.
Hi again. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with the millions of thyroid people that are in the world. Whether or not they get to see this, we'll see. But anybody that gets to see this, it will help them, I believe, in a way that they hadn't considered before. So thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. It's always good conversations with you, Kylie.
Thank you. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what do you believe is the metaphysical cause of thyroid disease?
So this actually took me a little while to work out, and it was as a result of being presented many clients with thyroid issues. And because you know that there's the autoimmune thyroid stuff that can go on, and there can just be the high or the low thyroid function. So the autoimmune issues are things like your Graves' disease when it goes really hyperactive, or Hashimoto's when it goes into low function. But then what happens when they go from Graves to Hashimoto's?
Yeah.
And then people get confused because, yeah, they can have different meanings because hyper is really like go, go, go. And those sort of hyper people, no matter how much they eat, they can tend to lose weight. They can have this anxious predisposition. And then the low function people, we think, oh, this is slow, they're sluggish, they're not motivated in life. But as I started processing emotions and facilitating this work with people that had thyroid conditions and a whole bunch of other things, the underlying for me was about speaking up about having a choice. So we think of the thyroid
Mm.
gland, and on a superficial level, people say, oh, it's in the throat chakra. You're just not speaking your truth. And I think we can talk about this with many chakras, and ultimately, this work is about speaking your truth. If I think of the throat chakra, I think of people telling lies, little white lies to get by, or making excuses, or being on the receiving end of lies and then not being able to speak up. But very specifically, what I've seen for people with thyroid, any thyroid function issues, high, low, autoimmune, is that it has to do with their ability to voice a choice in a situation, whatever it might be.
Can you give me an example?
That's tough for me.
um,
I
so
thrive
just so
on
that I can,
real
yeah,
questions.
just so that I can help make sure people understand what you're saying by that.
I can think of one.
Yeah.
So one that I recall, and I say that the time of the pandemic, it was a really interesting time because we saw so much divisiveness, particularly around people's choice of whether or not to get vaccinated. I don't know if I can say that
Yeah,
on.
I assume I don't know anymore either. Okay, but yeah, okay.
And then people's choice that they made from a grounded place, all of a sudden that can start to get really threatened because of what family members and their other opinions.
Gotcha. So they didn't want to say what their choice would be for fear of judgment,
Yes,
etc.
exactly. However, of course, lots of people experience this and not everyone presented it in their thyroid. But
True.
that's just one example. And I'm glad you asked that because, as you know, with my work, it's about what is that person's unique story around not being able to voice a choice about whatever situation it might be.
So is it also? feeling like you're lacking a choice, or is it simply about not being able to speak up about a choice that you want to make?
Yeah, I would say before voicing it, it is about knowing that you have a choice. In personal development, it's always thrown around, hey, you always have a choice. But actually
Mm.
embodying and then expressing that choice is easier said than done.
So you feel like a lot of thyroid people that have come across your path have struggled with, oh, I don't have a choice for a start. They feel that way.
Yeah, they can feel that way. And then when they do realize they have a choice, the next step is when they express their choice, the fear of what's going to come back. Am I going to disappoint people? What are they going to think about me? Am I going to have to let go of them? So, really, we find out what the message is for that individual, though, that walks them on this path to making a choice by maybe having conversations, release conversations with the thyroid, or having release conversations with the impact that the thyroid function is having on someone's body. And then also recognizing, well, when did the thyroid start to go out of whack? What was going on in your life? What were the events and the experiences that maybe triggered this autoimmune condition or this imbalance? So that's on the metaphysical. My experience from the number of thyroid people that I've worked with, it always comes back to some form of choice, but sometimes this can feel a little bit too distant for people unless they've gone on the journey. The other thing with thyroid as well that I think is really interesting to look at is from the Ayurvedic dosha perspective.
Hmm.
So, most people who have got thyroid issues usually are very dominant in the Vata constitution. So, the Vata constitution type people tend to be more lean and worried, a tendency towards anxiety, irritability, insomnia, peckish type eaters. So, more of a nervous predisposition. And they tend to be very more at risk of thyroid conditions, particularly the hyper or the graves.
Mm.
And they can get goiters as well if it gets really extreme. So graves is like when the eyes pop out of their head and they're very labile emotionally and just can't get on top of their anxiety. That's the extreme. That's where we don't want people to end up. But
Yep.
then on the other hand, why this only creates part of the picture is that the graves can burn out and then they become Hashimoto's. They become
Mm.
thyroid function and then they start gaining weight and so on.
Yep.
On the if people go straight to low thyroid function or Hashimoto's, from an Ayurvedic dosha perspective, from what I've seen, because doshas, what they help me do is work out how people engage with emotional work, but also it can explain why that person has that symptomology and all the different
Mm.
conditions that
Mm.
they present with. So Hashimoto's or low thyroid function tends to be the more kapha or the more solid built type person, where they try and diet, but they can't lose weight. They eat an apple and they gain 10 kilos, and just a slower predisposition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
And
really fun
I'll,
individual journey.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll back that up. I went to an Ayurvedic hospital in India in 2018. The doctor, insane, takes my pulse and says straight away, "Oh, you're very sensitive, aren't you?" I'm like, he did this with somebody else on it and said, "Oh, you've got hemorrhoids." And she went, "Yes." It's like, but he did this and he says, "Oh, I was kapha pitta,"
Mm.
which the kapha I understood. I already figured I was kapha. The pitta I did not understand. But as you were talking and you said that the vata, so does that mean if my kapha and pitta are out of control, then the vata is definitely not there if these two.
Yeah, well, they all work together, and often it's said that the Vata is the quickest to change. So if you're really out of balance and you don't know where to start on balancing your Vata. But
Yeah,
again, I don't want people to go, oh, right, I need to look into Ayurveda and balancing my Vata because this may not be relevant for that picture.
no.
Is it emotional? Is it chakra? Is it a dosha imbalance?
There's so many. It's the mind, body, soul, right? There's so many ways of looking at something, but and that was the idea of this conversation is I want people to start looking at their health as more than just I need to eat this certain thing, it's and move a certain way. It's also about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and how that impacts our body. So, and the question that I had after that was, did it matter what kind you have? So you covered that beautifully in that respect, because I believe that we should know about if we've got a genetic weakness. Now, so there's a question. Do you believe that it's a genetic weakness?
Mm.
If it's your thyroid, like, comes down in families.
Yeah. So when I ask people about their family history, I'm more interested to hear, well, one, if they've lost family members, how did they deal with their death or their illness that they may have died from? And what I'm looking for is, do they believe that it's hereditary? Do they believe that because their mother, their auntie, their grandmother had it, or, the other pathway, the paternal pathway, that I'm destined to get it? Because what we believe is really powerful. And I say,
Mm,
look, beyond belief, it's knowing and then it's trust. But do you believe that you're going to be at risk because you've inherited the gene? And Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this really well in the biology of belief, is that we can inherit the genes. It's like loading the gun, but we don't need to pull the trigger.
lifestyle or stress triggers
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Triggers, stress, emotional,
Mm,
physical, physiological. So, how is it that we can actually provide the best environment for ourselves physically, emotionally, environmentally, so that our body thrives, so that we don't have to have these genes turned on?
mm,
So if you have a genetic predisposition, one, I would be looking at what is your parents' or family members' dosha type, and because we don't inherit doshas, we're born into our unique blueprint.
oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, you might have a similar dosha and therefore have similar risk profile or predispositions, but on a deeper level, if you look after yourself, if you really understand the environment you thrive in, the people you surround yourself with, the emotional, personal development growth, then you don't have to have these things turn on.
Mm. Now, I wasn't going to talk about myself, but this is so freaking relevant to my story. It's crazy. Um, so I didn't actually know that mum had thyroid disease, to be honest. Like, I'm sure I must have at some point. I did not know. I certainly did not know that my great grandmother did, like, and goiters and all this sort of thing. Didn't know until it happened. Uh, but moved from, I was living on Hamilton Island in Queensland, and I moved to Perth to be with a man that I had met on holidays on Hamilton Island. And I didn't love him, and I thought I did, and all the things. And back to the choices you said, within about I'm going to say 3 weeks of being here with him, I went, oh, I've made the wrong choice here. But when I voiced it to him that I think I've made the wrong choice, he was like, "You're not leaving, are you?" And didn't want to let anybody down. so so we stayed, right? And 4 years, and then literally within 6 months, I my thyroid tanked. I started to put on weight and all the things. So not feeling like I had a choice well and truly played into that, but also the genetic weakness. But I'd also come from, I was living on an island in the humidity and the heat that obviously suited me, which is why I'm quite happy moving to Asia. It I moved to Perth and I was living and eating differently to what I had been.
Yeah.
And yeah, literally the thyroid came on like that. It took a couple of years to be diagnosed, but without knowing my genetic weakness and without really consciously knowing it, um, bang, that lack of choice. So that was really like, oh yeah, that hit hard.
Yeah, and see, this is just such a contrasting story for choice. And that's why I love the real life interaction example
Mm,
about yourself if anything's resonating.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the thing, people talk about intergenerational trauma. And I think, okay, great, but what can you do about it? And when you've got so much evidence backed up, sometimes that's what you're working off. And it does take a lot of strength and power and courage to be the one who perhaps breaks the cycle because in overcoming or not having thyroid, people would say, oh, even parents might say snide comments like, oh, you're going to get thyroid. It runs in our family.
Mm,
So you got to be pretty strong to not believe what you're being told or what the evidence is that's stacking up in your past. But in healing or preventing a disease state, it's not just your health that people see are different. It can trigger them as well. It's like, hang on, you're finally living a life where you're having these choices and you're not repeating our patterns. And that's the stuff that sometimes stops people from trying to be healthier or be the versions of themselves that they desire.
Interesting. Mm. So, because I've always had this belief that I could reverse my thyroid disease. And certainly when I became a naturopath, I reversed the antibodies super easy. Hashimoto's, that was not an issue. That was pretty straightforward in my world to reverse that. But I could, I've reduced my medication time and time again. But your thyroid gets lazy, or does it, right? And because it's so used to being fed medication. So then there's this belief system that, oh, no, no, you will never revive, a shriveled up thyroid. Um, and I have to admit, when I chose to have weight loss surgery, I was like, oh, okay. I've heard on a very low calorie diet that can cause thyroid problems. So I'm just going to have to give up on the idea of ever reversing my need for medication. That's where I went when I was deciding. So that is all just a belief system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we choose an easier option because the other option might take work. It might require us to change, but also believing that and noticing a little bit of change, you might build your confidence to maybe stretch a little bit more and say, well, actually, I do want to reverse it.
Mm. Well, that's where I'm at now. At the time of the weight loss surgery and all that sort of thing, I just sort of, I had to, I think, give in to that idea. Otherwise, it would have stopped me from moving forward. But now that that's done and dusted and 3 years down the track and obviously a success story there and no other issues, now I'm kind of, even though I'm in the camp of looking at other issues that I have, I'm my focus is back on the thyroid now and like, oh, hang on a sec, what can we do here?
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
Mm. So, from my perspective, with those belief systems that I've just shared, is that what I would work on in the inner work? I would work on that I believe I can't reverse it fully.
Yeah. So for me, I talk about people often talk about having these new beliefs and just overriding them. But what I like to do is have people process their emotions. And so you may process on that belief, but to be honest, it's finding events in your life, it's processing on the thyroid that's not functioning, or maybe you feel let down by your thyroid. It's processing on whatever events, and it starts to get clearer what the messages are and what the beliefs are for you to step into. So for me, what I feel is different about my emotional work is that you walk away with a message, but the message doesn't always make sense. But it's the truth. It's your body speaking to you because you're finally listening. And then this is where you hear it on repeat. Sometimes you got to hear the message a million times, and then all of a sudden it's the
You
same
get
word
it.
lands and you just get it. Yeah.
Does that happen often with people you work with?
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes people struggle to hear the message, even though it doesn't matter what they're processing on. It can be totally unrelated things. It can be a body part. It can be a workplace. It can be a inanimate object. And they seem so unrelated, but because it's come into their field, it's causing a trigger. They process on it and they keep on getting the same message.
Mm,
Sometimes what I am there to help people with is to be able to interpret the message because sometimes there's some symbology around it. And, that's what I think the value of having support in anyone in your life is for, is that sometimes we just cannot see beyond the evidence of what we've got or what we know or what we believe.
mm.
People would not even realize that they could reverse an autoimmune condition.
No, I guess not. And I see it time and time again. I had thyroid school for over 10 years now. So I have seen it said in every different way that, why are you talking about the possibility of reversal? Because you just can't. And they've got very black and white. No, that this is it. You can't do it. They believe their doctors, and To me, and to those people, I often say, so why are you here? Why are you following this page? Because it's like sometimes I feel like you've got to be that little um, bit of grit to go, oh, I don't
Yeah.
know, like, if you truly believe that's it, why are you here? Um, but what find interesting with going back to the choices of the people that I have watched and seen the comments and read all the things and interviewed and had courses. So I've spoken with and interviewed and worked with so many thyroid people, mostly women. Um, is I've always said it's this epidemic of putting others first. That's how I had worded it in my head, that thyroid people just simply put other people before themselves. But
Mm.
that, I think, very much plays into not feeling like you have a choice, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that that is very strong of the Hashimoto's presentation, especially if
Really?
the kapha constitutes
Ah,
dominant, because I was talking to someone this morning and I could tell what constitution they were. And although many different constitutions and personality types can be people pleasers, I would say the kapha dominant tend to get more concerned about speaking up for what they want for fear of disappointing the other person. And I feel like a lot of this work, no matter who you are or what constitution you are, it is about the ability to make yourself a priority, the ability to be able to speak up about what is going to serve you.
mm. And that's true of any disease, isn't it? It's very much like when you've got a chronic disease, you have to put yourself first, but
Yeah.
often people don't. They just go, "Oh, okay, you fix me." Which is fascinating because I do get that all the time. But yet I see these people searching for answers, and they private message me and all these sorts of things. Um, and my doctor can't explain my tests to me. Here you go, can you explain it? And I'm like, did you not speak up in your session and say, I don't understand this? So yeah, I see it time and time again, this lack of choice, lack of voice, lack of so from that perspective of putting other people first, that you see that's more hashies. What do you see from a Graves and hyper perspective?
Mm. So if we take out
Mm,
the Vata type constitution, who has more of a tendency towards worry and anxiety and so on, it's this is where we could probably come into the more literal terminology of, well, you're just like burning yourself out. Your metabolism is going in overdrive. Where is it that you feel like you're more sensitive to get caught up in the hustle and have to work, 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 work with no end and no balance of the rest or the time out?
they're more workaholics.
Um, I would say, okay, so I am bringing in a little bit of the Vata in my mind. I wouldn't say that the workaholics, because the workaholics tend to be the pitter personality, like
Mm,
work and they can burn themselves out. But yeah, so I am going to bring in the doshas. So the Vata, they tend to be more sensitive. And so when everyone else is rushing around them, they get caught up in that, even though their body doesn't want it. So they
gotcha.
get caught up in the hustle, the bustle, and Western society is very geared towards do more, work harder, rush, rush, get lots done in the day. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hypertrophy of it.
Yeah, okay. What about, have you come across many people with nodules or tumors or thyroid cancer? Because
Mm,
thyroid cancer is becoming quite common now.
yeah, and I think to go off the back of hereditary disease is why I love emotional work, is because there's a lot of people getting diagnosed with stuff that is not in their family history at all and
Mm,
a bit mysterious to them. So, yeah, for me, it actually doesn't matter if it's a thyroid function issue, high, low, autoimmune, or if it's nodules or if it's cancer. It's all about the person's unique journey and perspective with it.
gotcha.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
So, and same with goiter, I assume that falls into that as well.
yeah, yeah, because goiter, because of the physical appearance, and other times for nodules, it can be the impact it has on the voice, and it would be very different if they were a singer. It
Mm,
can be, I remember working with people in the past who had the nodules or cancer, and they had an inability to be able to raise their voice, which meant then that they weren't able to socialize easily in bars and so on because they would be straining so much and that would cause headaches and tension. So it was just uncomfortable for them. So that's how, how does it impact the person?
Mm. So do you look at things like, so when I see goiter from a metaphysical perspective, I think it's like, see me, please, somebody see me. I don't want to speak up, but I want you to see me. Is there a kind of what do you call it, a metaphysical reason for goiter as opposed to any other form?
Yeah, I have worked with people with goiters before, and again, it's very individual.
Yeah, right. So yeah, okay. And this is what I say about like the way we eat and all of that kind of thing. It's so individual. It's like you can say across the board, yep, generally we shouldn't eat gluten and dairy, but that's kind of where it like ends because everybody is so different.
Yeah, yeah. And if you find that you're someone with a goiter or a thyroid issue and none of this is resonating, it's because it's about a conversation. It's about a deeper conversation. Um, and that's where I think metaphysical can sometimes fall short because people hear it and they're like, that's not my story though.
Yeah, yeah,
You've got to
yeah.
go deeper. That's when you got to work with someone who can help you interpret it.
But do you find it's all almost always some kind of stress or trauma or something like that that precedes this kind of a diagnosis?
Yeah, yeah. Any sort of autoimmune condition, anything going out of balance in the body, stress, physical, physiological, or emotional.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that is backed up. Whenever I put up a post like that on Thyroid School, there's just comment after comment of, yeah, oh yeah, this person passed away, that, this thing happened. There's always something that precedes this sort of diagnosis. For me, it was my lack of choice. And then bang, there we go. Yeah. So really fascinating. Um, so how many people have you come across that in your work? And I know that there's somebody in your new book because I was reading about them on page, I'm going to say
Very
160.
story, I think.
Sherry's story
Yeah. Yeah.
um, about reversing her Hashimoto's. Um, do you come across, and if you haven't seen this before, anybody watching now, this is Jin's brand new book that was released this month. And we're going to have a competition on this very book that you can receive at the end of this video. So keep watching for that. Um, so, how many people have you come across in your work that have managed to reverse their issues, their thyroid issues, by doing the emotional work?
Hmm. So quite a few. I don't count because I
Mm,
work with a wide range of conditions. But Sherry stabilized her autoimmune markers for Hashis. But I do feel like one day she's going to tell me that she has been able to reverse it.
yeah, because they say with autoimmune disease that you never actually reverse it because that's your predisposition to that disease, that you just simply, I don't know
Mature.
how true this is. Yeah, because like I hear people say all the time online, I reversed my thyroid disease, and I have to, where somebody will say that, and I'll go, yeah, yeah, but no, 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 their antibodies are zero now. That's what they've done because I did that. But reversing the disease in general, I'm not sure that's
Well,
possible.
yeah, this is the nuance of the words. What is
Yeah.
that? Because someone reverse means one thing and remission
True.
means,
For
you
me,
know,
reversing it would mean not relying on medication any longer.
yeah, yeah. So I've had people that have been able to come off medication. I've had people where they would go to the doctor and they would never have any comment about their thyroid as if they never had the disease state. And I think of this, I think cancer is a good representation. I also work with a lot of people with cancer, is people go into remission. And then a lot of people with cancer who've had reoccurrence are like, oh, but hang on, it might come back. And it's like, okay, but if it comes back, we will deal with it. It will take them
Mm,
journey. And I've seen this, and why I work with a wide range of conditions, not just thyroid, not just cancer, is because any of these things can come back. My history was skin issues, and my skin will still speak to me, but just not in such a major way. My job is to listen when I get the little rash
yeah.
popping up on my fingers or on my toes before it turns into full-blown cystic acne. So there's Sherry's story, and everyone in this book And quite a few of them didn't think that all these results were possible for them. And I feel like their stories are still evolving because they're still walking the path, they're still stepping into their truth. Um, there was also Susan in there. She was actually a breast cancer story, but one of the repeated patterns was she just found herself at the doctor and the doctor going, "Oh my gosh, you have to come back in." So years prior to her having a breast cancer diagnosis, it was thyroid and she had Graves' disease. And the doctor said,
Um,
"You're going to be on medication for life."
yep.
But she went and did her own research. She changed her diet. She didn't want to take this medication. And I don't know if she took it for a little while, I can't quite remember. But by the time I had met her, she had no signs of thyroid um,
Mm,
or Graves' disease. And then there is another woman, she didn't have autoimmune, so Kirsten's in the book as well. Her story is actually about a fertility journey. And so she had multiple miscarriages when she was trying to get pregnant with her third, and she had low thyroid function. But we don't just focus on that. And so hers was amazing because it was after 8 weeks of doing emotional processing. And in addition to that, I just said, I think you need to go to sit a Vipassana meditation course. And that is just where you're silent, you go within. And she overcame all these blocks because she had a young family and she took herself off for 10, 11 days to do this. And when she came back, I said, I think this is the perfect time for you to go and get your thyroid tested. So I think it's important that we consider what's going on in our life when we're getting retested because you could have really good markers at one point in 6 weeks and then it could be terrible, in a few weeks' time. But she came back and she had actually been on medication a lot over the previous years. So when I saw her in her test results in November of 1 year was 5.5.
yep.
And ideally, I think we're under 2. Is
Yeah.
that
One
correct?
to two. 1 to 2 for most people is kind of ideal. Yep.
And then particularly with fertility, you want it to be under 2 from my
Mm,
understanding.
mm.
And so she'd taken medications, but she just really didn't want to be on the medication. And then after this 8 weeks of emotional processing, she was not taking medication. It was elevated, went to Vipassana, got it tested, and it was down below 2 or something like that. I can't remember if the figure was 3 or 2, but it was all done without focusing on her thyroid. It was just processing the emotions, getting her body into a great emotional foundational state. And this was the evidence that she needed for further down the track when she got into the third trimester and her physiology by medicine was saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. But because she was so well practiced in meditation, in the emotional work, she was always able to say, just give me a moment, just give me a day or two. Is this really that urgent? And she was able to change her physiology.
That's outstanding.
Hmm. So there's 3 sort of thyroid stories, but they're not really focused on actually thyroid being the main thing that they can.
No, it's because they've released emotions caught potentially in their thyroid, right? That's how it works. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's actually impacted more than just their health. It's gone into all facets of their life. And yeah, of course, it can come back, but we want to be aware of what is the environment, what's the emotional state, what is the life we need to live with less hustle and bustle to be able to have our body so it doesn't need to react in this way.
Mm, mm. There seems to be an epidemic of thyroid disease across the world. Why do you think that is now?
Mhm. So most people come into my work because they do want to be their authentic selves. They want to speak their truth. They want to feel more comfortable in evolving to the best version of themselves. And if we come back to being able to voice a choice, that is what's going to be required as you walk the path. I also feel like, on a whole, there is this crazy autoimmune conditions that people don't even have names for anymore. And I think it's the stress that people actually allow themselves to live with.
So you think it's the stress that's behind, not causes, but is behind this huge number of people that have these issues.
Yeah, and primarily the unprocessed emotions, because stress actually isn't a bad thing. I want to emphasize that stress is
We need,
for us
yeah.
to grow.
Mm.
But it's the stress that comes in the form of challenge where it feels like we can't handle it, we can't speak up about it, we can't ask for support. That's the stress that has a negative impact. It gets stored in the body and then it manifests in these ways because our body's trying to speak to us. It's trying to ask us to make these changes, to be courageous, to actually speak up for what we want. I
Mm,
mean, it does amaze me when I'm working with people how much they're not transparent within their relationships, how they feel like they can't say certain things, or even to their family who are relatively safe people to be able to speak up.
mm, mm. And that, yeah, no, I see that all the time too. So I get that. What would be the starting point for somebody who has never faced their emotions, is like, oh, that just makes me feel sick at the idea of doing that?
Yeah.
What's their starting point? How do they even begin?
Yes. Okay. So I actually did a little presentation on this with people who were really keen to get into the emotional work. And so the first step of my process is just scream. It's your emergency release button. You don't need to intellectualize it. You don't even need to know what emotions you are storing. And it takes 3 to 10 seconds. That is so
You
much
can
less.
scream into a pillow for those thinking, I can't just scream out loud.
I have all of the solutions for you. There is literally no excuse. I know that some people, because of medical reasons, may not be able to scream because of the pressure and so on. But again, there are alternatives. There's humming, there's groaning, there's roaring. There is actually just like letting some primal sounds out. And you just got to give it a go. And you have to find space to be able to do it. You know, I
Mm,
sort of say to people, you
mm.
can do it underwater in the bathtub. You can do it in the swimming pool, do it in the ocean, pump up some music. So, especially for the thyroid, it's great. And it's actually really amusing to see and observe what comes out of you and what you think your scream's going to sound like. And then sometimes it's just so pathetic and how it changes its vibration and frequency over the days. So, yeah, I have a whole teaching on it. But, if you want to just go away and try this out, it's go scream, do it
It's
every.
free. You
Yeah.
don't have to do it around anyone. You don't have to make an appointment with anyone. And when I first started doing this, way back when I started working with you, um, it fascinated me that I was judging myself before I'd even started screaming. I'm like, who am I to scream? I can't scream out loud. Like, who's going to be, what would people think? Nobody's going to know. But I'm like, what will people think? It's just the ride that goes on in your mind is insane.
I know. And, Sherry's story comes in chapter 10, which is about the five biggest fears people have when it comes to emotional work. And I think it's just so valuable to actually speak this out and acknowledge that this is what most people will have going on in their mind. And then they overcome these fears. This is so representative of anything that we desire in life. You overcome the fears and you walk the journey. It was exciting and there's challenging things that happen along the way. But yeah, Scream is so easy. Sometimes I feel like, it seems like silly advice, but some of the best advice is the simplest and it's the most accessible. And for
Mm.
me, I say to people, if you're not even willing to scream, we're not even going to go to the next step.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And I know I've worked with people over the years that, you know, even screaming is just too much for them. It's too harsh. It's too, no, that's
They
angry.
have all they have all these perceptions about screaming is angry and so on. It's like, no, it's just a release.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and where else can you get a modality that's free on your own time frame, and you don't have to tell anyone about, and can make such a difference in your world? Because I do recall back then, because I've always had issues with my voice. It can come and go and get hoarse, and I assume nodules going up and down, that sort of thing. Um, and for years, I would be asked time and time again, have you got a cold? Have you have you losing your voice? Have you got no, no, that's just my thyroid. Um, but I do recall back, and we're talking, oh, would you know how many years ago? Maybe 5 years, like 2000 and, no, 7 years ago, maybe. I'm not sure. 2018, 19,
With what?
working with you when I first
Oh
started,
no,
when I
no,
first learned.
I only went online 2020. So It probably would have been around 2021 that I think we worked.
Okay, so it must have been up here, rightio. I feel like it was back in Perth. Um, but I do recall the difference in my throat as time went by. It got clearer and easier and didn't sound horsey, and I need to go back to that.
For us all. And after you've done it every day for 3 weeks, don't just stop. If it's helped you, then keep doing it once or twice a week. It's an embodiment practice. It's a quick, easy emergency release.
Oh, it's brilliant. So, where can people find other gin tips and tricks like this one?
So I have a few platforms. The Art of Listening to Your Body on Instagram is where I'm most active. And then every now and then I will record a podcast when the energy is there. Sometimes I interview people as well, or it's just ideas that land. So that's called The Art of Listening to Your Body as well. And you can find that iTunes, Spotify, and I do put the video version on YouTube as well.
Beautiful. And if somebody wants to work with you directly, can they do that?
Yeah, they can. I would usually recommend that you have a look at my work for a little bit. The book is also a really great entry point, and the book is not just about pain and processing emotions, it's about what comes after you process your emotions. It is about the manifestation piece, the vision work as well, and really showing you what's possible. So it's not a doom and gloom book. It's really
Oh,
quite
it's not doom and gloom at all. The words you write so beautifully. It's almost poetry, I have to say. You're a beautiful writer, and it's just so easy to read.
awesome. And I was hoping that it would be easy to read. And I think that people will feel a resonance on whether or not we take that next step. Otherwise, there's the Missing Link Masterclass that's free. Because I do say it's not entry level. It's not entry level emotional work. Most people will come to me because they've tried so much else and
Mm,
they don't have much resistance to give this a go, to be able to access their intuition, to be able to speak to their body and just know, yeah, if you've got a health issue, we're not just talking about your health. We're really looking at all areas of your life.
which a lot of people can be very confronted by.
Yeah. But if they
Mm,
go on those platforms, I trust they'll find out how they can work with me or they can message me. But I'll usually say, go and listen to some things first.
yeah,
Otherwise, it can just be too confronting and it's not, yeah, not the
yeah.
right place to start.
Well, I will put all the linky links in the box below, so you will find all the links that you possibly need. I highly, highly recommend this book. And after I'm finished speaking to Jen, I will tell you how you can win this very copy. But Jen, thank you for sharing your. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you would want to say to thyroid people as a collective?
I think you've covered most of it, but go on the journey of processing your emotions. You don't actually have to be in pain. You don't have to have a significant disease state. It just takes you to the most amazing places. It helps you tap into what your soul purpose is and manifest a life beyond what you thought possible.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining me, and we will see you again sometime soon, I have no doubt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, if you've made it this far, you deserve to know about the free book, right? Okay, so all you need to do is write in the comments below why you think you need to read this book, and I will put all comments in a random generator. And the winner, I will send you this very book, not one off Amazon, but directly from me here in Australia. I will send it to the winner. So tell Jen down below why you want to read her book. Thanks for watching.